Tec Sounds presents EduTrends.
Welcome to EduTrends, brought to you by the Institute for the Future of Education. This is a Tec Sound podcast, the official podcast platform of Tecnológico de Monterrey. I am Jose Perpez Camilla, Associate Director of the Institute for the Future of Education, and today's guest is Elliot Boucher, a young entrepreneur and co-founder of EduSign. Elliot, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Thanks. So the first question I want to ask you is a personal question. So you studied something related to entrepreneurship, and then you decide to create EduSign, which is an EdTech and a startup using technology for education. Why, from all the different sectors, economical sectors, did you choose to create a tool in education?
Well, it's a interesting question. I think when you first start a company, very often it comes from a personal problem. So in my case, I was just a student and I had an issue with attendance tracking, which was actually terrible in France, at least. And so we just tried to build something for our own problem. So it wasn't really an industry that we choose, and in the industry chose us, we would say. So that's why we pursued EdTech, and at the end of the day, it appeared to be a bigger problem than what we thought. So that's why we pursued after the first MVP. But at the beginning, yeah, it was really just a personal problem.
Yes, very, very interesting, because we always say that it's important to get in love with a problem, not with a tool. So this is the case. You really
Definitely, we didn't pursue a trend or something like that. We didn't say we want to build something around AI, for example, and just go around that. We really focused on fixing our own issues, and started with something very simple. We had a piece of paper and we wanted to digitize that, and then further on we automated that, build API integration, etc., etc.
So part of the people that hear this podcast are entrepreneurs, not everyone. No, I think that most of our listeners are people that work directly in education, either practitioners or leaderships. But they are users of technology also, and startups like you. So just to empathize with them, I would like you to tell us what are the biggest challenges that you face building this startup, and what you have to do to overcome these challenges.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously you have always common challenges between industries. Like you need to build a product. If it's a SaaS, you have to first build the first MVPs, the first technology. But I think what's interesting to talk about is the specificities in EdTech. And so when you think about education, very often there is this image of something that is a bit slower than other industries. For example, if you sell a software for marketing for big companies, it might be easier to sell. But actually, in my opinion, it wasn't really the case. It's just that higher education and companies around education, generally speaking, need to have very specific needs. And I think it's a good thing, because obviously you don't want to have something that is always the same when it comes to education. We need to have diversities. But at the same time, it comes with a few challenges, because with every school you have different needs. And so the really biggest challenges that we had was not really convinced people that our idea was good, but making it personalized enough for their needs. And so at the beginning we had very simple products, but they already wanted, business schools and engineering schools wanted something very, very specific to their needs. So the hard thing was saying no to a lot of things to be able to really focus on the core product, even though it meant that we didn't build something huge for them and very, very personalized. But at the same time, it needed to be a little bit personalized. So this balance between personalization and scalability of a project, I think, is really the hardest part of an EdTech. And that's why you don't see a lot of EdTech that go beyond one country, for example. So in my opinion, that's really the biggest one. And the second one will be the political aspect of things. I think in a school, for even smaller budgets compared to a company, you need to have a lot of people involved. And so we need to, and we still need to make sure that we have the right person in the call right away, and make sure that everyone is on board. Otherwise, the project can just stop for just one person in an organization, which is, I think, a little bit rarer in normal, I would say, companies. So those are the biggest challenges, I would say, when it comes to the industry. And obviously, after that, it was just about building the right product, making sure that it's known and it fixes the problem right.
Mhm, mhm. So one of the things that you say is uh, to choose to develop the core, and it was difficult uh, to stop doing some stuff, no? So maybe deciding what not to do is more difficult.
Yeah, exactly. I'll give you an example. So we had this very simple need where we wanted to digitize paper. So you have a paper to track attendance, you sign it. Okay, we digitize that. So that's the first thing. That's the core product. So everybody needs that. But very quickly, you have those different asks. So, for example, since we track students, we could be something close to a CRM. So we had actually schools ask us to build something around sales or around registration or around documents managing. So you have all these possibilities. So yeah, saying no is actually the hardest part. And sometimes schools are slow, but then once they have an idea, they have the money to go really further. So we had to say no to big checks at some times because we knew that it was just a one in lifetime deal, maybe, yes. But at the same time, it was just once. And so we didn't think that we could replicate it. Sometimes, luckily, we had a few opportunities where we could align both things and say, well, we can do 90% of that. We can't do 100%, but we can do 90. But at least we know that maybe 80% will be reusable elsewhere. And so that makes sense. But I think if we look at both sides, I think for something to work in EdTech, you need a university, a higher education system organization that is willing to compromise just a little bit. And at the same time, the EdTech needs to go maybe a little bit further than otherwise we would accept in standard SaaS, I would say.
Yes, thanks for the example. It clarifies a lot on how to decide what are the things that we should focus. And also, we always hear from entrepreneurs phrases like "fail fast" and "fail smart" or "learn from your mistakes," things like that. Can you tell us what was your mistake as entrepreneur that became a valuable learning experience?
Well, I think it's actually around speed. So this common thing that is fail fast, I think is sometimes a little bit misleading because you need to fail fast at the beginning to understand what works and what doesn't. But at the same time, if you commit too soon to something and you keep it, it's really hard to change it later on. So, for example, we thought at the beginning that in a course, you couldn't have more than two teachers. But actually, we discovered after a few months that you can have a few more teachers. And so, this simple thing, simple change, took us 2 years to fix because we had built a lot of things around it, and to go back to the core was really hard. So I think um, failing fast and going fast is a good idea to start a new thing and to find new ideas. At the same time, you need to be willing to sometimes destroy maybe a few things, do something right once you know something um, should scale. And so, if I were to do it again, I think I would do pretty much the same thing. But at some point, I would say, okay, stop here. We know what should be the core of the product. We did it fast, so not very well. So we need to maybe destroy it, do it a little bit better because it took us a lot of time. And right now it's okay after a few years, but I think we wasted a few months, a few years coming back to simple things that the first choices are the most important, basically. And so this balance again is a little bit hard to manage, but I think that's the takeaway here to go fast, but once you know what you need to do, maybe slow a little bit.
A very interesting approach. I also heard that compared to other industries, the cycles of adoption in education are relatively slow. It could take 1 year, a year and a half for school or a university to adopt a technology. So that made me think that maybe this being the first on the market is not necessarily as important as in other industries, but maybe being a better fit for the market is more important, even if you're a little late.
I agree. I think that in education, this margin of 10% better is not that important. They have the time to really invest in something for the long term. So I think the winning solution very often are the ones that are willing to go long term and do something that is not just 10% better, but 10 times better. But at the same time, the startup needs to survive and have some money. So again, it's a balance between going fast enough so that you can sell a few things, maybe the core product, at the same time building something that will scale with the needs of higher education, with a university with 10,000 students, for example, because you can start with a simple MVP for a course, but you need to scale it. So it needs to work at scale. You need to convince a lot of people. So yet it's still a bit slow. But I think the good thing about education, it's yes, it's slow, but once the decision is made, is are committed to work with you and do something well. I think everyone actually in this industry is really friendly and helpful, and so I think that's a good thing. So yeah, it takes time, but it's an investment, I would say, that you need to make to build something that works in the long term.
Thank you. Uh, what advice will you give to other aspiring entrepreneurs, young people like you, or what advice would you give to the you of the past? No, what
Yeah,
today in terms of what to do to start an EdTech company? What advice?
so yeah, it's an interesting question because I think those are two different questions. I would say to myself, maybe go a bit slower sometime and do something that really can scale. And so it refers to the point I was making just earlier. But I think for most people, it's about making the first step. And so if you're an aspiring entrepreneur, you're not an entrepreneur yet, you didn't start, just start. Take something, go for it. The first idea very often is not the one that will work, or it will work differently than what you think today. And so you need to start, confront the market, and try to maybe not sell, but at least make something that people want, make something that is useful, and then worry about the price later, worry about the scalability maybe a little bit later, but take action. This is really the first step that uh, I would say wannabe entrepreneur don't take, and they stay at this stage, which is a bit sad, I think, because very often it's different between success and not success, just doing it. And obviously, we have a lot of luck when right now we have a company that works quite well, and um, you know COVID helped us. You need to find the right people, you need to find the right product, the right idea, but at the same time nothing will happen if you don't take action. So I think that would be my advice.
Thank you, Elliot. I've been a judge in several competitions related to EdTech startups. Particularly, there's one that we organize in Latin America. Is the Global EdTech Startup Awards, LATAM. We have organized them for more than 8 years here in the region. One of the things that we look when we evaluate a startup for this is the quality of the team, I would say, or how strong is the team. So when you have an idea, you have to build a team. So how you get convince people that could have, I don't know, jobs in the market that can make them get money, etc., faster, to be crazy enough to go into a startup.
um, I think you shouldn't need to convince that person too much, otherwise it's probably not a good fit. So that being said, once someone wants to leave, then the question is why would they go with you and not someone else? I think you have many people that want to be an entrepreneur or work with an entrepreneur or be a co-founder in general because you're the CEO, CTO, whatever. And so the question is really who do you want to work with, and then who can work with you well. And I think a common mistake is to try to work with your friends, and that can be a good start. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I think very often you should look for complementary people that have skills that you don't, and For example, in our case, we have one person that is really good at sales and really quite good, I think, in marketing and product, and someone else is quite good at being a CTO. And so we have those complementary skills that you really need to have at the beginning because you can't do everything yourself. Once your company is a little bit bigger, you can always hire for more specialized position, maybe replace someone, but that's the most important thing. And then obviously, something that is quite important is to make sure that you want to basically marry these people because you will spend maybe 10 years or even more sometimes with this person if the company is successful. If it's not successful, well, it doesn't really matter. So you play for the success. And so you need to make sure that you're willing to commit for 10 years with this person. And if you don't think that's a good idea, don't do it. I think it's a terrible idea. It won't end well. In most cases, you're right. The co-founders are the most important component, I think, especially at the beginning. And so you need to make sure that you're willing to really work with this person. And it doesn't mean that you need to agree on everything, but you need to be able to work through problems together. And that doesn't mean that you can't argue. That doesn't mean that you can't be different. And I would say even it's better if you argue, it's better if you're different. But you need to be able to, at some point, resolve and move forward, disagree and commit, basically. And I think that is the best relationship that you can have if you have someone that doesn't agree always with you, because otherwise, uh, you just have your point of view and that doesn't work. So that would be the things that I would be looking for. And how to find people, I would say again, the first best step that you can make is just take action. Just go for it, build something, and the rest will follow. Because if you have a very small product, if you have something, a few users, it's much easier to find someone to work with if you're alone today than if you have just an idea. Because ideas are cheap, execution is really the key. So, yeah, that's about it.
Thanks. So people that complement what you have and that can disagree with you in a good way, so that you have different view and they can execute things. No, so there's another component another human component important in a startup. We've seen also in our programs in our EdTech incubator, particularly in the EdTech accelerator program. One of the things that the startups that pass through our program, around 10 startups every year in each of the programs, uh, it's the mentors, no, the mentors that we bring for different reasons. No, some mentors are more oriented to the problem, some are more oriented to investment, some more oriented to technology, etc. So I would like to ask you if you had a mentor in this journey or a mentor, and how did she influence your journey?
It's interesting because I see a lot of people having mentors, and then I wish I had a great mentor, but I didn't maybe look for it enough. And so I don't really have one mentor. I think my mentors are in podcast, in books. I think you have a lot of resources available online. And um, besides, the things that are static, so podcast and books and things that are done, you can always reach out to people. People are quite kind and willing to give their time to someone that is building something. So don't hesitate to reach out to people. I think LinkedIn works wonders for that. You can send a few messages and talk with someone very quickly about anything you need or you want. And obviously, you need to bring something to the table at some point, whether it's monetary things so that you can pay that person or something else. And sometimes just an exchange of information. I think, when we say you need to network, in my opinion, you don't really always need to network, but you need to create those relationships and take a few experts in one area, another one, read a book, uh, listen to a podcast, and then you won't be an expert, but you will have 80/20 on those things. And if you need a mentor, if you can find a mentor, totally do that if you can. But in my case, I didn't really have one. Uh,
So it's a nice to have.
I think it's a nice to have, probably a very nice to have, and I actually wish sometimes I had a mentor because the entrepreneurship journey is sometimes a little bit lonely. There are a few things that you can't really talk about with your employees or even your co-founders in some cases. So I think having someone else in your life to talk about that is always a good idea, and it could be your partner, it could be your friends. but having someone that is really willing to listen, that maybe has some experience around that, is, yes, probably very likely even something that is a plus. And yeah, maybe in the future, who knows?
Yes, and also you can mentor someone eventually.
Definitely, yeah, that works as well. Actually, mentoring people, I think, is a, teaching is a great way to learn as well. And I think when you actually teach, you think about the problem yourself, you think about things, and you explore new ideas. And so, yeah, I think that's also something that I would advise definitely.
And what about your expansion? So how the company? Because you started, I understand that you started this company in Grenoble, the city where you were born. You were right now, and I also lived there for 6 years, by the way. And then you had this first area of work, maybe France or the francophone countries, etc. How you started to grow? What your strategy for that?
Yeah. So the first strategy was to build a product that worked really well for the French markets, but always keep in mind that we wanted to go internationally. So that was something that we always knew. And so we built something that, um, not straight away, because you always need to adapt a few things, obviously, but as much as possible was scalable and was capable of going outside of France. So right now with internet, you have way less boundaries. I mean, we can talk with each other. You're not even in the same continent. I think that's amazing. And so the strategy was build something that works really well for France. And then we knew that a few French customers would have opportunities outside of France. You have French companies that operate in South America, in the US, in the UK, in Spain, etc., etc. And so those are first starting points, first opportunity to discuss. Again, do that product research, user research, try to build something that people use, people want, and then again do this same cycle of improving the product until it's something good enough to be sold, and hopefully it takes off. And we are not 100,000 100 million AR company yet, but um, hopefully this will work in the future. So we try to have this approach of doing something scalable that is, again, flexible. I think the tricky part here is, especially in education, having, again, something that is personalized to the needs of the institution, whether it's a big or small one, whether it's in France or in another continent. Um, you need to adapt, but at the same time, build something that is not, fully um, custom. If you build something new for everyone, that is not going to work. So you need to think about the product that you use daily, that are worldwide. If you take WhatsApp, for example, it works pretty much everywhere in the same way. That's a great product. And we try to have this approach that are same in the core. And you have those few options that some countries are going to use and some others are not going to use, maybe. But at the same time, it scales. So that's about it. And then you have the go to market strategy. And we always wanted to have someone that spoke the same language, obviously, as our customers. So I'm not selling in Latam, for example. And then we have a super person doing that, and in other countries as well. So that's how we go about it.
Thank you, Elliot. One last question, or one of the last questions, is about what you have seen. You have as an entrepreneur, you see a lot of users, no, people from schools, universities, etc., but also startups in the market and technologies. So, what do you think are the trends and the technologies that we will see growing in the future? And I will include AI there, but maybe not only AI. If you have something else to say, sure.
Yeah, well, of course, AI is going to arrive, but interestingly, there are a lot of talks around AI, and we find that higher education people are really willing to talk about AI, but they are not always ready. If you look even at the top institution in France, like Polytechnique or HEC, they're not investing a lot in AI. In reality, they talk about it, they do some workshop around it, but it's not something yet that is big enough. So maybe in the future, but I think the biggest trend right now are still things that are maybe a little bit boring, but digitization of processes, going from Excel to cloud SaaS, uh, doing things that are automated and not manual are the stuff that are important. And so that's on the admin side. And when you think about the student side, I think that's where you have a lot of exciting things going around. And I think that's where AI has the most potential in the short term. So you see a lot of things working well for teachers and students, and you have a lot of startups evolving around that. And so it depends on your point of view. If you look at the students experience, I think AI is going to be huge. You have a lot of integration, a lot of things that are going to be great on that side. If you look at the organization, I think we still need to not maybe push too fast on the AI. Hopefully it will come, but making sure that we have those infrastructure so that then AI can come. Because obviously, if you don't have a data lake, if you don't have a good document organization, if you don't have everything in the cloud, it's going to be harder to go full on AI. So um, I think those are the trends. I think a few things that we wanted to have 10 years ago, like adaptive learning, are going to come around with AI. Hopefully, personalization is going to be easier, and that will be done by the school, by the teachers, and even by the students. And so those things are going to help, but at the same time, you need to make sure that you have this infrastructure. And I think some things are going to die out, or maybe take some time to come at a later stage, like AR, VR. We wished that we had VR headsets that were light, and everybody would have that in the classroom. But today, it's not the case. And I think it won't be the case for quite a bit of time, unfortunately. So I wouldn't bet on hardware. I would bet still on the cloud, AI, and I think the user experience need to be improved in a lot of areas. We have a public that is sometimes um, very opposite, I would say. You have the students that are very, very tech savvy and want AI. And if you ask them, they really want to use those technologies. And at the same time, you have teachers and you have the administrators that uh, see the things that they are doing today and see AI and maybe don't see the connection or don't see how to go about it. And it's hard. And so you need to invest as well in learning for teachers and administrators to make sure that they can then provide those tools correctly to the
Yeah,
students.
thank you. And I agree with you with what you say. Education is the last big economic sector to be digitized. No, so we don't talk about retail, and we don't think that there could be a repair that is not digital, or a finance bank or whatever company that is not digital, even in health, no, and other fields. Tourism, for instance, all our things are digitized already, and education is lagging, and it's a very big sector. It's 10,
Well,
10
I
trillion.
would say, yeah, it's lacking, but everything is not black or white. And I think it's not as terrible as people would make it. Some areas are well advanced in. I mean, you have a lot of e-courses. MOOC are something that are here for quite a bit of time now. There are a lot of things that are going well as well. We always talk about the wrong things, but I think you also have a few things that are well digitized. It's just that sometimes you have this um, idea that they want to push AI, push the boundaries on one course, whereas you have maybe something simpler and more important to do for most people. And so I think the investment sometimes a little bit disproportionate in those small stuff when you don't have the basic big stuff. But uh, you have a lot of improvements in all around the world. We see it, by the way, in France, in the UK, in the US, in LATAM. Everything is being digitized. So it moves forward. It's a bit late, but it moves.
Mhm. Oh, for instance, we help a lot of universities also. Last year, we worked with more than 60 or 70 universities around the world, mainly in Latin America, some of them in Europe, uh, in their educational model, but also in the DB plus strategy and some tools. And We know that inside the university, our university, we believe we are not going as fast as we wanted. But as you say, we have a data lake. We have anonymized all our use students' records, and for the last 20 years, and we can do research with that and share it in our data hub. We have 250,000 students with all of their data, for instance, and that's for some universities, it's very difficult to do that because they don't even have the information in a single database, no? And we have 16 courses for incoming students that use adaptive learning, for instance, that good results that we've been using for a while, and that we decided that we will not stop doing them until we see what happened with generative AI. We also have hardware, as you say, of virtual reality. We have in our libraries, because we have 26 campus in 22 cities. In our libraries, we have VR zones where the students can go and use that to learn. So we have around 20,000 students every semester that use that technology. So I think we are an example of a university that is very advanced in the use of technology, even if inside the university we think that we should go faster. But in my conversations with other people from AI, some of them think like you. I am more like you, that I think if you don't have the data or the things that you need to use to take advantage, the best use of AI, then it will be difficult to really help the students. But there are other school of thoughts, now people that say, well, in some countries we pass from, I don't know, no telephone to mobile, no, and now almost 100% of the people. So can we leapfrog with technology like generative AI, the lack of structure or things in education?
Well, the thing, I think it's a good way of looking at it, because yes, maybe at some point you will be able to leapfrog, but if you look at, for example, China, so they went from nothing to mobile phone, they skipped the laptop. Okay, fair enough, but I mean, you need, if you have a laptop today, to be ready to go to the mobile. You need to engage in learning. You need to do a lot of things to move from one thing to the other. So leapfrogging may happen, but very often it happens later. And if you look at China, yes, they leapfrog, but they leapfrog later than Europe went from laptop to mobile phone, for example. So maybe, but I wouldn't bet on it. And I think it's, if you have the resources to not leapfrog, why try to wait and see? I mean, just go for it. But again, you have, and you are a great example of technology applied to education, but it's always the same. It comes from the people. So I think the first step, if you don't know where to go, as a university has a small even training organization or a company that just want to innovate, is just hire the right persons, right? You need to have the people that are going to think about that, because what we see even in big universities, sometimes you don't even have one or two person that really know what an API is, or that really know what AI can do today. And so you need to have those people that are going to be at the forefront, even if today it may not mean revenue for the school, and in the future it will be. So yeah, that's a choice. But I would say, if you want to wait for the leapfrog, you can do it, and maybe it will come. But if it won't, you'll be late, and really late. So it's a risk.
Okay, well, thank you for your answer, Elliot. Merci pour ton temps. Thanks for your time and for sharing your insights. And thanks for being very direct with your answers. I think they will be of use for people that are starting an entrepreneurship idea in EdTech, but also for people like us that work in universities and educational institutions to understand the things that startups do when they have to begin with an initial idea, then grow and provide value for a lot of users in different places. Thanks a lot. For more information, visit observatory.tech.mx/EduTrends podcast and ife.tech.mx. A special thanks to Tecnológico de Monterrey, the Institute for the Future of Education, and the Tec Sounds team. EduTrends producers Esteban Venegas and Christian Igosa. Stay tuned and play Tec Sounds in your favorite podcast app for other great shows and content.